Earlier today, the Salvation Army released their latest State of the Nation report entitled Costs of Living, providing an annual snapshot of our social progress as a nation and focusing on 6 key areas. Joining us in the Rhema studio this afternoon is one of the report's authors, Principal Policy Analyst for the Social Policy and Parliamentary Unit of the Salvation Army, Ronji Ronji Talofa. Thank you for joining us.
Mahalo lava, thanks for having me, team.
Yeah, it is wonderful to have you in studio today to talk about this report. Now, it focuses on 6 key areas. What are these areas and what's the reason for choosing them?
Well, the 6 key areas are housing, children in poverty, working incomes, social hazards, which are to do with addictions, and crime and punishment. Those are the main 5 main social policy areas. And the 6th area we've added a couple of years ago is a comparison between Māori and non-Māori. The reason why we've chosen these areas are because these are areas that the Salvation Army is working in our Christian mission to care for people, transform lives and reform society by God's power. We're working in all 6 of these areas. And so it's a beast of a report, over 120 different indicators we're looking at. And that's why I'm still going cross-eyed with this stuff. But by the grace of God, this is the 16th year we've done it. So.
Wow.
And, hey, important research, I suppose, to say, hey, how are we doing as a society? Are government policies making any difference, or are social agencies making a difference in that regard? Firstly, though, let's focus on the positive. What are some of the good things happening in our society, Ronji?
Yeah, I guess when you look at the report overall, there's always a mixed bag. It's a little bit like a buffet. There's some good things that are happening there. There's not so good things that are happening there. And so some of the things that we find are very encouraging. We've seen child poverty rates decline. We're building more houses across the country. We've seen convictions for drug convictions decline. The prison numbers go down. So those are some of the things I think. I don't know if we celebrate those things, but we acknowledge that there's been some change and some progress in the last year and the last couple of years.
Now, what are some of the concerns then? I guess we could go to that area. I mean, where are we going backwards?
Yeah, the concerns part of the report is probably the part that's longer than my arm, and I think that's the challenge of it. But I think I guess there's 2 main areas, if I can quickly highlight, that I think have really stood out, come out strongly in this report. I think firstly is the state of our young people. We've seen worsening educational achievement. We've seen truancy rates that are going up. We're seeing children, 1 in 4 young people are claiming that they have depression, anxiety, and heightened stress. We've seen NEET employment rate. So this is a rate that measures not engaged in employment, education, or training. We've seen that rate remains stable, but it's still double in Bay of Plenty and Northland what it is in Auckland and Wellington. So there's some real pressing areas to do with our children and our young people. And then finally, probably the second area I'd highlight is around the financial stress on people. Again, it's called cost of living because there's an increased pressure and squeeze on families. We're seeing more people access credit to try and make things go in their financial, in their household incomes. We're seeing more people struggle around joblessness. We're seeing more people gambling. And so all of these things, I think, show that there's a real stress and a pressure on our children and young people, but there's some real stresses and pressures on the families that they come from. And I think ultimately it's a squeeze on whānau. And the cost of living, financial crisis, inflation, whatever you call it, it's pressing families, all families in New Zealand, but especially those who are poorer, more vulnerable in our communities.
And those costs of living aren't just financial, of course. If a part of our society is struggling, that impacts all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the care of that's us caring for our neighbours, right? And I think that's a fundamental Christian principle. But at the same time, I think this report is to try and inform people and get some numbers, but behind the numbers are always stories. But I think it's also there to try and disturb people. When you disturb people, you're getting them to care, you're getting them to pay attention, getting them to think about these things and actually be calls to action. And I think that's, if we can lead to some good action, some good policies, some good community solutions, I think that might help us caring for others and looking beyond our own little bubbles.
Now, the government has recently announced going back to these bread and butter policies. Do you reckon that's good news?
Well, I think it's good news, but I think it's probably long overdue, to be honest. I think one of the things that that we've been challenged with in terms of government policy is sometimes it's driven more by ideology and theory rather than real meaningful change. And I think what we're after as the Salvation Army is real meaningful change, where we've got policy, whether it's in housing, addictions, welfare, whatever it is, but policies that actually bring change and impact for our families. But also, we're tired of being the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff.
Yeah.
We need more policies and actually more government solutions. I don't think more community solutions. I think one danger is we think that government is our savior. We're thinking, and we need to rely too much on government answers and government policy. But there's solutions in our communities as well. The more we can have good government policy with good community solutions, then we're starting to build rings or fences at the top of the cliff so families aren't falling over to the bottom of the cliff. And I think that's what we need to work towards.
And when we talk Salvation Army, we don't think about government policy. That's not where our salvation comes from, of course.
Exactly, man. And I acknowledge that. I mean, we love the work that we're doing, Andrew, and I think it's wonderful to feed, to clothe, to help, but it's the gospel that changes. It's the powerful, saving gospel of Jesus Christ. And I think the beauty of the Army is that we can do both. Yeah. And I hope we never forget that.
Now, it is an election year, of course, this year, and well, hopefully there's going to be politicians and policymakers who are reading this report at the moment. What would you like for them to take away from the report and turn into election issues this year?
I think we need good policy, good, meaningful, impactful, research-based social policy, not necessarily driven by bureaucracies and inquiries and working groups and theories and that kind of stuff.
Consultants.
Yeah. Well, let's not go there with the media, with the radio. I mean, that's been a real challenge. I think we need good policy over those kinds of things. I think, and what drives good policy? We need policy that's tested. We need policy that is going to work for all New Zealanders, not just certain parts of New Zealanders. So I think when you're looking at the issues, look, I can go forever about what the issues are. We need more good rental options. We need more to help our children and our young people. We need more to support the voice of victims in crimes because that's excluded. It's almost excluded from our system. We need more of these things. But at the same time, I think we need to hold to account our politicians to make sure that they're acting on what they're saying, not just because of ideology, because we're all driven by ideology and worldview, but actually to move past some of that stuff and actually get to the meat and bones of policy and law and solutions both in government and in our community that are actually going to help our families.
I mean, it certainly makes for some really challenging and interesting reading, this report. Can people access it online?
Yeah, I don't know all the www. things, but you can go to the Salvation Army website. You can find it there.
Okay.
You can go on MySpace. I don't even know what's
We'll
live.
go to the Salvation Army website.
Sorry, man.
We'll go there first,
TikTok or Instabooks, whatever it is. But it's all available on all our social media platforms.
Okay.
Feel free to engage with us. But again, there's a full report. We have a summary report as well and a bunch of videos if you're too bored can't be stuffed reading the report. We've got some videos to help explain this stuff as well.
Well, we certainly encourage people to go to the Salvation Army website, and we can put a link on our website direct to you guys as well.
Thanks for saving me.
Ronji,
and the MySpace and TikTok.
yeah, there we go. Shows how old I am.
Ronji, we really appreciate what you and the social policy unit are involved with. Thank you so much for your mahi. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Whawhatai, thank you for joining us.
My Lord team, thanks for covering this story. God bless you guys and important work that you do. And please keep engaging in some of these massive issues. My Lord, love it.